大家好，我们是王人力。今天的话题是中国有语的同学小号小慧。Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video today. What we're going to talk about is Chinese fishing gear. Are they good or are they bad? Now, if you're new to the channel, this channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing. We cover everything from big game, ultralight, everything in the middle, including fly fishing. And today we have a very interesting topic. I think this is something that's also kind of needed, and just to clear some things out. And I'm pretty sure that for the guys that are not ready to spend money, this would be a sort of like a survival guide. And I believe no one else has done this because it's kind of a very touchy subject. And a lot of people are thinking that, hey, Chinese gear and all this. And see, everything that's kind of made in China has a stigma attached to it. And some of it is actually kind of unfounded. To tell you honestly, of the hundreds of rods that I have here in the office, there's only a handful that are actually Japanese made. A lot are made in China. And they're not bad. They're really not bad. Now, there are some things that you have to do and you have to be cognizant of to actually get the best out of them and pretty much get the best out of your money. The problem is a lot of people don't know how to go about this. So if you're a business and you're running, you're selling Chinese stuff, if there's people that watch this video, I'm sorry. Because you know what? This is going to change things for a lot of people. Okay? Basically, this guide will show people, or this video will show people how to choose the rods that are really good from the bunch. Okay? And that's going to leave a lot of rods unsold. Or basically, the rods that are going to be sold are going to be for people that just don't know how to choose up until they watch this video at least. So, I would encourage everyone to actually share this video to your friends, especially if they're starting out. Okay? Share this video. That way, we can help improve the quality. And basically, we will actually let the tackle shops pressure the manufacturers or the suppliers to build better rods. Because as soon as the information goes out that this is how you do things, guess what? People are going to be more educated, and the producers will actually be forced to do what's right. And I think that's something that needs to be done, especially in this industry, because some of the manufacturers and some of the sellers are just out of control. It's crazy. Okay, so hopefully this changes things. Now, I don't want to say made in China. As you could probably tell from the thumbnail, I affectionately call them Panda Gear. Okay, because again, like I said, made in China has a very, very bad connotation. And I think as far as manufacturing is concerned, China has come a long way. Believe it or not, China has come a long way. It's unbelievable. Yes, probably down like a few years back, and yeah, it could have been really bad. A few years back, let's say in the 80s. But believe it or not, manufacturing has since really changed. And whether you like it or not, China is here to stay. China is here to stay. A lot of people, even the US manufacturers, they're gonna have a hard time. Japanese manufacturers, they will have a hard time because China is improving. And the more we actually demand products that are of good quality from China, the better. because what's going to happen eventually is that they're going to upgrade their technology, they're going to upgrade their labor force, and bam, before you know it, that's that. All right, so before we get into things, this is not a brand specific video. What this is a guide so that you would know exactly what to choose from. And it doesn't matter what brand or what tier brand it is. I am going to share with you what I have learned in the industry while I was working for the industry. That's A. And B, what I personally do to actually look at rods and see. Okay. And three, the why. I always answer the question why. And you know what? Here's the thing. A lot of people might not like this video. Okay, they might probably think that I'm spewing BS, but see, here's the thing. You could form a lot of assumptions and you can form a lot of opinions. The fact of the matter is, if you're a consumer, you're just a consumer. Now, if you are working for a manufacturer at the root of it, you'll know that this is basically how things go. Okay? So, this is actually insider information for this whole manufacturing industry. If you don't like what I have to say, well, bad luck, because it is what it is. Okay? This is my experience working with around 5 factories. Okay? That is it. Now, having said that, I'm pretty sure that not a lot of people would appreciate the information, but a lot of people would. I think it depends on which side of the fence you're sitting at. I think a lot of consumers would actually find this very informative. And yeah, that's that. All right. So now let's actually talk about the tiers, because there are tiers, manufacturing tiers or manufacturing levels when it comes to factories in China. Okay. It depends on the market that they're selling. So you find a factory. Let's say in China, there's a kind of like a state there. I think it's called Weihai. Okay, and then this. Okay, you know what? Let's Weihai fishing. Yeah, it is Weihai, the region. Okay, so basically, they're arranged in China. How it's the manufacturing, they're arranged in the kind of regions. So, Weihai is the region for fishing. And in Weihai, we could go there and then literally go to any factory, and you'll see like these factories. What do you call this? District. There we go. That's what do you call this? The Weihai. So in Weihai, no, it's not district. It's like a place, like an industrial place. So they're putting these places, these industries in places. So like take for example, the fishing is in Weihai, auto parts manufacturing would be somewhere else, manufacturing paints would be something else, somewhere else. So that's basically how you what do you call this, find things in China. So they're all clustered into other one place. So there's different factories there, manufacturing for, let's say, guides, fishing guides are there, hypalon, cork, blanks, and all this. And then there's also companies that produce fishing rods, fishing reels, line, and everything. They're all lumped into one, accessories. They're all lumped into one area. Okay, and again, it's Weihai. Now, when you go to these factories, and then you want to work with them, right? You sit down and then you talk to them, and then you go like, okay, I want to build a fishing rod. So what type of fishing rod? And then you can have access to like the catalog, extensive catalogs of whatever type of fishing, wherever you might be in the world. Okay, so the fishing in South Africa is slightly different from the fishing in the UK. They would know which rods, and some of these factories actually specialize in South African gear. Some of them would be specialized in fly fishing gear. I've worked with with a company that actually I've learned that they've accidentally, because they've accidentally did something, but they also, aside from spinning stuff and overhead stuff, they actually build fly rods for a US manufacturer. So, you know, they do that, but they don't tell people because they have exclusivity deals, or they signed an NDA with this one company, but that's how it goes. So basically, if they have an NDA to produce for a company, let's say for this particular one, they produced fly rods only for this company. And we wouldn't have found out if they didn't send the wrong box, but they did. So, when we opened them, they were like, whoa, they sent the wrong box. All right. So what's funny is that this company in the US, which I will not, it's their thing, and that this actually happened. And I'm not going to say which company this is because, it's also kind of unfair, especially since it's the factory that messed up and it wasn't this company. All right. But what I can say is that these rods were not cheap. And again, going back to the other video, this kind of supports exactly what these companies are doing when it comes to warranty fulfillment. What's funny though is that this company, they don't really say that the stuff is from China. All right. Now, tiers, when you go to, or levels, when you go to these companies, they'll give you, let's say, okay, I want a surf rod made. Okay. So when I go there and tell them that I want a surf rod made, it will be South African style. And they go like, okay, so we build the rods South African style. This is how they are, and then they'll give you the levels. Okay. Now, they'll give you the levels within South Africa, but also you get to choose the level according to the cost that you want to pay. Because when you're manufacturing these things, or let's say I'm a brand, okay, so let's say we go, okay, here's a very good example. There is a brand in the States which we will call Fire Chicken, okay? So Fire Chicken, all their blanks, all the rods, actually not just the blanks, but all their rods are made in China. And then once they actually price it out, their target cost would, let's say one rod would be for $200. Believe it or not, the cost for that particular rod is about 10% to manufacture. So you're looking at a $20 rod, which Fire Chicken would ultimately sell in the market for $200. And these are figures that are, believe it or not fake. These are actually quite accurate. So like take for example, a top end tier rod, they would build it for $100, but the selling price of that would be anywhere between $800 to $1,000. That's the truth of it, okay? And there's a difference because there's different levels of quality. Now, this tells you that China can build really, really good rods, okay? Now, the brands that have their manufacturing in China, okay? We have Major Craft. They have stuff that's made in China, actually. There's Shimano, okay? They have rods that are actually built in China. And like take for example the Grappler series, that's all Chinese. And then Daiwa, and there's a few Japanese brands, okay? Abu Garcia, Apia, made in China. And they're kind of open. I mean, for Apia, the design is from Japan, the quality control is actually controlled by Japan, and then the specifications, everything from how the carbon is rolled and all this, it's Japanese. So basically, China is just contributing labor. as far as the materials and all the componentry, it's all Japan. So they do that to bring the cost down because labor in China is actually cheap. Okay, now that tells you that there are levels. Okay, like take for example, everything that is manufactured in China that is for Japanese distribution or Japanese use, they always demand the highest quality for the whole thing. Okay. Um, Examples are, I've shown this before. This is Abu Garcia. And this rod is JDM. Made in China, JDM. So the manufacturing is in China, but the componentry that they put on this one, it's actually quite high. The workmanship, very high. I'm sure that the as far as labor and craftsmanship is concerned, they've done it. They've done it at a very, very high level, so that uh, the reject percentage would be lower. Now, Chinese manufacturers can do that. Believe it or not, they can. Now, one of the things uh, that one of the things that you should watch out for is the componentry. Obviously, Fuji components are kind of the desired components, and a lot has to do with the frame and the rings when it comes to rods. Okay, so like take for example, this is a mid-end rod. This is an ocean field jigging rod from Abu Garcia, JDM. You can't buy this in the States, but the workmanship on this is actually quite spot on. Now, one of the one of the things that you should actually look at is if the rod is splined correctly, and that's how you do it. So basically, you just bend it and roll, bang. So you can see that this is a spinning rod, and the bend, it's here. So the spline is actually here. Now, if you're looking for an overhead or conventional rod, if you're choosing, what you want to do is you roll it, and then the spline should be where the guides are sitting. Now, you do this in a lot of rods, and you'll see that the spline could be anywhere. So choose the spline carefully. Okay, spline the rods. Now, for JDMs, they're actually done right. Fun fact, they're done right. Now, here's a very good example of a good Chinese rod. Okay, the Chinese brand Ikuda is actually quite decent. Okay, this is one of my fast jigging rods, and as you can see, if I spline this, it's actually, see, it's actually splined correctly. Okay, it's splined correctly. But guess what? I went to the shop, and lucky for me, the what do you call this? The shop attendant didn't know what I was up to, but I asked him, take all of the rods that you have for this particular one, and I want to choose. Mind you, this is cheap. This is like about $120 or something, so it's a cheap rod. So I said, bring all the rods that you have on stock for this particular one, because I'll choose the one that I want. And he was like, what? But see, the thing is, that shop was empty when I went there, so he obliged. He took all the rods, and I splined each and every single one of them. And I found one. Out of 20 something rods, I found one that was done correctly. So, if you're buying a Chinese rod, especially if you're buying it online, good luck, because it's going to be kind of like drawing lots. It's a lottery. So, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually get a good rod. That is, if you're buying a Chinese branded rod. Now, If you're buying something that's Japanese, made in China, but a Japanese only or Japanese release rod, basically a JDM rod that's made in China, they will put the best components, the best workmanship on that rod. Okay, so case in point, this is a mid-end, okay, and the guides are actually very, very decent. Now, there are really top-end Japanese domestic only rods. I'll show you. So again, from Abu, as you could tell, I really like this brand. So this particular one is the KRX shore jigging, and the craftsmanship on this is really, really good. All right, so again, the componentry, they didn't spare expense. The workmanship, it's really, really nice. And if you could only see this, it's really well built. Componentry, uh, very, very light. This is a max 140 gram overhead shore jigging rod. Really, really good. Okay, and you know, uh, I bought this online, but I was very confident that this is something that they did right. And when it arrived, I splined it, perfect, each and every single time. Now, this is one of those things that separates the what do you call this, the Japanese made rods and the rods that are intended for elsewhere. Okay, this particular one is a unicorn because this was only released for 6 months, and then the rest, it's, well, they discontinued it. So this rod has Torzite guides, and as you could probably tell, it's again an Abu Garcia. It is quite long at 11 feet, and the bait caster, the casting weight on this is 7 to 35 grams. Or what is it? Let me, yeah, 7 to 35. Okay, PE 1 to 3, 11 feet, quite rare, and definitely one of my favorites. It is literally, again, a Japanese only and quite a top end rod. It wasn't cheap. The shipping was more expensive. I had to pay almost double just to get this rod here because of the length. But even if the manufacturer or the brand is Abu Garcia, it wasn't made available to the US. Very specific. It is basically a shore jigging, or not shore jigging, but it's a lure casting rod. And you could use really small poppers, stick baits, small jigs on this rod, and caught some big fish over at the Dubai Creek for me, actually, this particular rod. But basically, when you're buying a rod, if it's not JDM, it's not going to be splined correctly. The componentry is not going to be top notch. Okay, now very thing that's important is that you look at the componentry and see exactly if they're using at least alkanite, if you are going to be using braid, at least an alkanite. Stainless steel frames are okay, but top end rods, especially those that I've shown you here, like the top end, the more expensive ones, will actually have titanium torzite. And there are a lot of companies, like take for example Appia. They're not cheap. They're made in China. They're not cheap. The componentry is top notch. The blanks are top notch. They're very, very light, very responsive rods. So you could just, I mean, the blank is made in China. Manufacturing is China. Components, like take for example the carbon fiber mat that they're using, that's from Toray, Japan. What do you call this? The guides, they're from Fuji. Although there are also Chinese counterparts, and most of the brands are actually using them. And sad to say, there are also some fakes. So again, from a reputable brand, example Shimano, obviously that's going to be like the real stuff. But You have to be very, very careful because, like, take for example, there are second tier brands, and you know, you just don't know. Like, take for example, Cast King is another brand, right? They've actually kind of come up because they've taken the U.S. market by storm. So you go Cast King, and you know that they're not really like top end. They're not. Let's say they're not a first tier manufacturer. So they're catering towards the lower and the middle end market. Now you what I'm trying to say is that these things are not bad. It's just that you get what you pay for and don't expect that they're going to be top notch. They're going to do the job, and that's basically it. Now, if you're looking for something that's really, really good, you're gonna have to pay a bit more because of the componentry. And especially, I asked a friend of mine who's a rod builder, and I asked him, it's so easy to spline the rod. Why don't you just do it? The thing is, it's time. It's very time consuming. And that's it. Now, a way around the splining is, of course, to do a spiral wrap on the rod. So the guides are not straight, they're spiral wrapped. And with that, it doesn't matter. You can spiral it left, you can spiral it right, depending on the placement of the reel. But then again, not a lot of you wouldn't be able to guess exactly if the reel needs the reel that they put is a right hand or a left hand reel. So you don't know how many you need of the spiral left or spiral right rods. This is the reason why for manufacturing it's still good to actually have straight guides, because it doesn't matter if you have a right hand wind reel or a left hand wind reel. So those spiral rods will cost you a bit more. I know that because one of the rods one of the rods are actually designed for this manufacturer, which I thought would be built as elsewhere. They were built in China. So I was kind of surprised because, you know, I was working with a Japanese company, and then all of a sudden they passed me over to the manufacturer, which was in China, and I was kind of surprised because I know that they have a factory elsewhere, but we weren't directed there. We were directed to China, and mind you, this is also a segment of their branding that was in the top end, and it was made in China. So that was kind of surprising. Anyway, as far as the rods are concerned, if you can, buy them locally, okay, and then spline them. If you spline them correctly, what happens is that when you're fishing, especially let's say when you're jigging, okay, the rod doesn't want to twist in your hand. And when you're jigging, okay, the rod will actually load and unload straight. So it's helping you out as opposed to actually just wanting to go one way or the other. Okay, what you want is for the rod to actually go up and down as you're jigging it, and when you're fighting the fish, it doesn't want to twist on your hand, especially when it's overheads. Obviously, when it comes to spinning, it's the same thing, only it's going to be upside down. Okay, so the rod doesn't want to go like this. But for spinning, it's a little bit easier because your reel is actually hanging down, and that kind of balances it and keeps it right side up. Okay, so very, very important there. Now, componentry is what makes it expensive. Okay, so the kind of guides that you put on there is actually what's going to pile up the cost. So from a $10 rod, it becomes 50 or 60 because of the guides that you put in. Obviously, they can manufacture the blanks as cheap as they can because, believe it or not, the blanks are not that expensive. A lot of people are very concerned, and I am too, with the action of the rod and everything. But when you break your rods, the blank itself is actually kind of cheap to manufacture because if they build it in-house, let's say they roll it in-house, It's basically just rolling it on a mandrel and then putting it in the oven. That's what they actually do, and they do in a huge quantity. And they could do that quite fast. Okay? The componentry that they put in, that's mostly always something that they buy. Although they get it at a discount, you know, you have to worry about supply for the type of rod that's being designed, and the guides are very specific. So they have to order that. Example, if your order is for 1,000 rods, it would probably be cheaper, because what's gonna happen is that they will order it in bulk, right? They'll order it in bulk, and the bigger the order is, the cheaper, because the bigger the discount that they're probably gonna get. So rolling 1,000 rods is far cheaper than rolling 50, even if 50 would be their minimum order quantity. And that's another thing, the MOQ. The MOQ depends if the rod is being built from scratch or there's already an existing design that you just alter to make it your own. And mind you, this is a very, very common practice. A lot of companies would actually buy rods from other companies, take it to China, and have them manufacture. And then the Chinese company would say, what type of quality do you want? Tier 1, basically the ones that are made for Japan, very, very expensive. One rod would probably cost you $100 or more, which obviously you will have to kind of sell at a really high cost. So this is not me. This is what I've experienced working with factories in China. The very top quality is reserved for the Japanese market or whoever wants to pay that premium. So there's that quality, and then there's European. It's not anywhere, but most places in Europe, they pay a lot higher. And the demand for the gear there is actually more, you know, kind of more quality. The third tier, believe it or not, is American. And this is generally the kind of the same quality, or the well, American quality would be 2 tiers lower than the highest quality. I almost didn't want to say this, but you know what? It's the truth. Because if you think about it, again, it all goes back to how much profit that they want, and to how much warranties they need to service. So the American quality is actually from the top lower. Okay, that's the truth of it. So if you go to a company and tell them, hey, you know, I want this, that. Now, let's go back to the brands that are, let's say, in the US. And then it translates to actually having them satisfy the warranty, and then fishability would be kind of less. Okay, especially if they're building something that from the ground up. But we're talking about just the rod, this, let's say, being replicated. So what happens is that the componentry might not be as good. Remember, the blanks are cheap. It's the componentry that matters. So we have guides that are kind of cheap, you know, stainless steel as opposed to titanium, because you don't need it. You know, all of these actually bring the cost up or down. The blanks, they would want an adjustment for the blanks as well, because they don't want the blanks to kind of break, you know. So there's adjustments to things here and there until they get really the spec that they want. And then after that, they want the cost to be lower, so they adjust the componentry. And that's that. Okay? It's the same with reels. It's the same with reels. So the quality of the, let's say, the reel. Let's say you have a fathom. So initial design would be, and by the way, yes, it's made in China. It's there, right there. So they came from Penn, made in USA. This is a very good example. One of the last to be built there. Torque 100, one of my favorite reels. And then to the fathom. This is a Fathom 2. So with this reel, okay, made in China. The design for this, probably you could put more bearings on this. Obviously, they have to cut down on the bearing because the more bearings the reel has, the more parts you need to swap out or maintain. Okay, so like any reel really, except for the top end ones like the Stellas and the Saltigas, you could put more bearings because the casing was designed to actually have a lot more bearings, and they put bushings instead. Shimano does this. Let's say a very good example would be Shimano. What's that? I have them Spheros, and then Saragossa. Um, and then what's the other one? Stradic. Those are basically the same reels. It's just that there's an adjustment when it comes to the componentry. So you can build a Spheros up to be a Saragossa. 100%. All the componentry would be the same, and then you just put more bearings, and then you have a better performing reel. Same thing with these, okay? Now for these, one advice I can give you if you want, I haven't done this with this, I haven't done it with this because I didn't need to, because, well, I don't really use it a lot. But for you guys, a very, 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 very big tip for you guys that want to make this better, okay? Or any reel for that matter that's made in China. And this is a tip that I received or I got when I was younger, dealing with water pumps. Our neighbor, he's a Chinese dude, and he loved inventing stuff, okay? And what he did was he said, all you need to do is change the bearings. Of any Chinese moving parts, the very first thing that will break would be the bearings, because the bearings are the ones, or one of the parts that they actually cheap out on. So if you have this reel, okay, or any other Chinese reel, spinning or overhead, the very first thing you do is swap out all the bearings and all the bushings to better ones. If you put Japanese bearings on them, even better, because we know that the Japanese bearings are actually quite good. If you can find American bearings that you think would be like really good, go ahead and do that. But change the bearings, because the bearings on these reels or any other Chinese made machine, the bearing is what makes or breaks it. In fact, actually even Avid, you know, the first thing that breaks on an Avid, bearings. Funny thing, Accurate doesn't do that. It's just the Avid. So even if it's American made, kind of, you know, the same thing. I'm not saying that the Avids are of the same quality as Chinese made stuff. It's not. It's better quality, but it's been known that their bearings kind of are not really that good. So change the bearings. Penns, they're really good. As soon as you change the bearings, it's like 10 times better. I know this for a fact because I have a Penn 525, and it's literally one of the best surf casting reels that were ever made. And to make it even better, you swap out the bearings. And now that thing is so good, it's unbelievable. Okay, it's still around. I still use it. I love it. Okay, now that 525 is actually a very good example of UK or European release. So still a Penn, and if you Google Penn 525, you'll actually find something very familiar, especially for you American folks. You'll find that the 525 in the UK is actually called, or the Penn Squall is actually called a Penn 525 in the UK. And the drag, instead of a slider, it's actually kind of like a knobby. And believe it or not, that one change actually makes a whole lot of difference. Now, in the past, they even made a better one. The Penn 525 actually had a mono mag, and for some weird reason, they ditched that, and they just, put a slider or a sliding mechanism inside that covers the magnet. So, kind of something different. But before, it was a mono mag, and literally that was one of the very best reels that were ever done. So, as far as the cost is concerned, it was also more expensive. So if it's $150 in the US, guess what? It's 150 pounds in the UK. And obviously, because probably of the bulk of the manufacturing for the US is actually kind of higher than in the UK, the cost is higher. But it just tells you that there is a difference. It shows you that there is a difference. And it's not only that, there's quite a lot of things, like especially with the rods that are sold in Europe, they're just of higher quality, because again of the tiers that exist. And even with fishing line, even with fishing line, it is the same thing. And I found that out again because I worked in the industry, and there was a difference. There are certain markets, like take for example for bass fishing markets, or for the bass fishing market, and they actually kind of like the American spec stuff, and stay away from the Japanese stuff, because the Japanese stuff, they're kind of thin, and especially when you're fishing around snags, um, it's much more advantageous for the lines to actually be over spec'd. So take for example for Japanese braid, um, they're thinner because they're based on diameter. They're thinner, it doesn't mean to say that they're weak. They're just built thinner. And when they say 40 pounds or 50 pounds, actually breaks at 50 or thereabouts. In the US, when they say 20 pound, they break at around 50. And the reasoning being is that, not strength. But see, the thing is, all you have to do is just learn how to tie good knots. Done. But it's their style. Remember, the US style is kind of different. They bounce their fish, they do all sorts of things well, kind of rough on their tackle. So they need something like that. Now, the bearings on these, if you open them, they're packed with grease. They're not really good bearings. Only the bearings are packed with grease. And what happens if it's packed with grease? They're not as smooth, but they stand saltwater intrusion more. So if you upgrade the bearings, like take for example what I do for most of my casting reels, like these, or even the Japanese ones, I upgrade them to ceramic bearings. And the ceramics, they're very, very slick. They don't need grease. Yeah, they get noisy and everything, but the overall quality of the reel just gets higher. So you'll have farther casts, or you don't put a lot of force and then they go the same distance, something like that. So it helps. All right. So Chinese gear, are they good or bad? They're not. They're not bad. Okay. There are Japanese companies that have their stuff built. Shimano is one. Okay. And most of the Shimano rods that I have there, believe it or not, they have a made in China sticker. So what? Just as long as the quality control is actually up to the spec of whatever market you're in. And if you want higher quality, if you're in the US, look for a made in China rod that's built for Japan. And that's going to be really, really good. Or not. Because if you buy rods from the States, they will have the best warranty in the world. You break it, they'll replace it. Period. In Japan, it's not like that. But in Japan, you'll have the best fishability when it comes to rods. When it comes to reels, same thing. Okay? If you want robustness, here we go. Depends on you. Depends on how much you want to spend, and depends on your type of fishing. If you want to roll around the mud, roll around the sand, get a Van Staal. It's heavy, And if you're a kayak fisherman, it's very useful because you could also use it as an anchor. But those things are indestructible. You know, so it really depends on you. Again, made in China, no problem. If you know how to use them, well, no. If you know how to choose, they're really good. Some of the rods there, even my work rod, okay, before, when I used to work for this company, I'd go to a shop, okay, choose the best one, and then use that. That's it. You know, at least I know that whatever I'm using is actually pretty good. So now the secret's out. I shared it with you guys, and hopefully you would be able to capitalize on that and get a better fishing experience fishing Chinese-made gear. Alrighty. Now, if you have questions, drop them in the comment section. If you have experiences, actually share them. Really good experience or really bad experience using Chinese equipment, put them on the bottom. You know, let's start a discussion and then make it known to the manufacturers and also the tackle shops so that they would, up their game and make things better for everyone, not just me, for everyone. Alrighty? If you're new to the channel, don't forget to drop this video a like if you've learned something and share it with your friends. Again, share. It's very, very important that you share with your friends so that they learn with you and you grow up together. Alrighty? If you have questions or have violent reactions, go ahead and drop them out in the comment section. Alrighty, that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed. 再见. Oh, by the way, if you want to support this channel going forward, click on that membership button. Alrighty, later!